Hi, my name is Sheikh Ismail. I am a co-founder at Sodium Learn, and on this first episode of the Sodium Learn podcast, I have with me Sheikh Umara Zoni. Hi, Sheikh Umara Zoni. How are you doing?
Hello, Yusuf. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and thank you for coming on to the first episode of this little L&D podcast series that we have going on. And I just wanted to ask you three quick questions in regards to how you find learning at your current workplace and what your situation is. But I think it's best to start with an introduction from yourself. Just tell me a bit about yourself and what you're currently up to.
So, I'm a second year PhD student at the University of Cambridge. So, I work on a lot of computational modeling that is focused on heart valve replacement procedures.
Okay, that's amazing. And how long have you been doing that for?
So, I came to Cambridge for 2 years, but this kind of tracked from a master's project that I did the year before.
All right, and that's amazing. All right, so I just want to get on to the questions and not take up too much of your time. So, first question is, can you recall a learning experience that really stood out to you, and why did it stand out to you?
I think one of the most interesting learning experiences was I went to a conference and they had a VR set where you could look actually inside of the heart's anatomy and actually visually see where are you placing these valves. I think being able to interact with the software, but as well as looking at the anatomy on a different level really helps the user experience.
And did you find it more effective by being able to visually see things instead of like having it in just images and on a PowerPoint and things like that?
I think it was much more proactive being able to actually interact with the images that we were seeing. So I definitely think the visuals played a big role in that.
Do you feel like where you are at right now is very textbook based, or do you have a lot of these instances where you are using VR or AR, anything like that?
I think right now it's very traditional. So we use a lot of textbooks, a lot of reading material. I think there's not enough visual material about the things that we are looking at, and not just cardiovascular applications, it can even be cerebral. I think nowadays there should be more of a push towards this because it's definitely easier for people who, like myself, who've never looked at the heart before in this much detail to then start working on such a big project on it.
Yeah. Okay, no, that makes perfect sense. So at your current working environment, right? So I know you're doing a PhD, right? So in your current working environment, how do you see your current training develop over the next 5 years or even up until you finish your PhD? How do you see it growing and where would you like it to be at by the time you finish?
I think in terms of training, there should be a lot more collaboration and interaction. I think nowadays what's happening is that there are lots of really interesting research and science and development that's happening, but access to those is very limited. And it's either if you know someone or you have some sort of collaboration, but even at times knowing when someone's doing these things is pretty difficult, I'd say. So
Hmm.
I think in the next few years, I'd like to be able to collaborate more with others and experts in the field. So then I can learn from them visually and see how they're setting up their models and how I can improve mine.
Okay, and at your current place of work, do you have like a system in place that you can go on the web or you can go on like a platform that is given to you by your company, or do you mean interactions in terms of face to face and like a more formal saying in that way?
I think nowadays everything is quite hybrid. So I'm happy to do things that are online, but there isn't necessarily a platform where you can easily reach out to these people. Normally it comes from, if someone you know knows somebody, kind of like word of mouth, which I find quite difficult because, especially when you're new, it's where do you look? So I think having a platform where you can freely interact with these people and experts in the field and learn from them would be really beneficial.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point. And again, you're mentioning collaboration a lot. That's something that we aspire to push for in terms of training. We feel like there's not enough collaboration. And you also mentioning that again, as I said. So it's very good that you picked up on that. So do you think that's like a limiting factor in terms of training, just the lack of collaboration?
I feel as though depending on everyone's experience, collaboration is something that when you do a lot of, it really does make a big difference in your learning. And I feel like the pace at which you learn becomes much faster than when you didn't. I can say that especially before I started my collaborations, everything felt quite slow and there was nobody to kind of go to when you needed guidance. But now having a collaborator, I feel like it speeds things up and it stops the slow process of the steep learning curve.
Just a side question: do you use any AI at your current workplace to help with your training, or is there any elements of AI being used?
Most of the times, I like to use AI to help structure my writing because for me, coming from an academic background and now writing in a research background is very different, especially because I come from engineering, but now I have to think in a clinical way. So sometimes the way you structure and tell your story, and especially when you're trying to engage your research with people who are non expert or even younger people, it becomes difficult when there's no kind of, platform that can give you the A to Z answer of how you would do this. So I feel like for me, it's mainly writing.
Okay, in your writing. So writing, you mentioned that's one aspect, but how do you think, and if you have any opinion on it, how do you think AI will affect training where you're at in any workplace? How do you think AI will become a key player in training now and then onto the future as well?
I think AI is going to play a big role. I think, especially where we are right now, especially with ChatGPT starting us off, I feel like there's going to be a rise in AI. I think it's going to really help people to kind of bounce off ideas. Sometimes, it's difficult when you're in a large group. You don't know how to communicate well with others. Sometimes I feel like AI can bring people together in that way. I also think it can help automate things and make it faster, which I think definitely nowadays is a big issue, especially when you're working, with large data, large files. You want everything to be there when you want it. So I can definitely see it in that sense.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's perfect. Do you think that training is something that companies should focus more on, or do you think we're in a good place right now in terms of that?
I think nowadays the thing with AI as well sometimes makes people dependent on AI to do the critical thinking for them. So I feel like AI, if we spin on it and use it for training to actually help people learn how to do critical thinking, I think that would be really beneficial. So I think boosting their, critical thinking, their speaking skills, communication, I feel like this is important, especially when we're now, in a technical world.
Yeah. No, and I completely agree with that. And with that, we're just going to wrap it up. Again, thank you so much for your time and for giving us your insights.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.